Previously, if we wanted to see the life of another, we had to pass by their home. We had to take a look at their car. We had to be in close proximity to these individuals in order to see how they live their lives. But today, we have a constant companion with us that gives us access to the lives of others. So we pick up our phones and we are constantly scrolling through social media and through their lives. And what this does to us is it creates discontent, ingratitude within the heart for that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instituted 30 days of the fast for us to actually take a lesson from that fast and for us to gain gratitude from the fast. You know, oftentimes we say that we are meant to fast for taqwa, to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that taqwa should actually lead us to gratitude. And gratitude leads us to faith and belief in Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us when it comes to the rich of society, what does He say? What is your duty when you see the rich and you see those who have more of the wealth than you? وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ زَهْرَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا لِنَفْتِنَهُمْ فِيهِ وَرِزْقُ رَبِّكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. And don't extend your gaze to that which we have given the wealthy of society, the beauty of this world. زهرة الحياة الدنيا. Why did we give it to them? لنفتنهم فيه. To test them with it. And the rizq of your Lord is better, خير وأبقى, and longer lasting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us not to extend our gaze. And previously it is true, you needed to extend your gaze and look and say, wow, amazing, subhanallah, right? But today all you need is to take your phone out and look at what's happening and say, wow. And the problem is this wowing is happening so often that it is affecting our psyche. So when you get off a session from social media, having viewed the life of others, then what is your feeling? I want you to pay attention. The next time you get off a session on social media, then what is the feeling that you have? Do you feel content? Do you feel happy? Do you feel like you are connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do you feel disconnected and unhappy? And do you feel depressed? And do you feel like your life is worse than theirs? And you have such a measly life and they have such an amazing life. You know, when it comes to looking at others, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam tells us, "Unzuru ila man huwa dunakum." Look at those who have less than you. وَلَا تَنظُرُوا إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ فَوْقَكُمْ. And don't look at those who have more than you. فَهُوَ أَجْدَرُ أَلَّا تَزْدَرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. So you are more unlikely to then belittle the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over you. And when that happens, naturally, when you lower your gaze and you look at those who have less and you look at that which is around you, you are more focused on that which Allah has given you. So you become more content and you become more thankful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us at this juncture, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. If you are grateful, then I will give you more. We assume that by looking up at their lives, we'll attain what they have. We assume that we'll get it. We assume that that is what we are going to achieve by looking at their lives. Maybe we'll get a part of it, right? But in reality, not the algorithm, but the formula that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instituted works the other way. If you look down, focus on what Allah has given you, be grateful for it, then what happens? we will increase you. We will increase you. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised you. And the fast plays a pivotal role in this. Because if I were to tell you that sit at a normal day throughout the year, right? Any day, choose a day, when you're not hungry, not thirsty, and put some dates and water in front of you. And I tell you, what is your feeling towards those dates and water? You'd say, well, they're just dates and water, right? But let's put the same two foods, or the water and dates, in front of you after a long, arduous fast where your throat is parched and your belly is grumbling. And now, all of a sudden, that date looks enticing. It looks amazing. You can't wait to put it into your mouth. The water, you can't wait to drink it, because you know that as soon as you drink that sip of water, you'll actually feel the coolness spread within. And you'll feel the water going down. And you'll really enjoy that sip of water. Why? Because you were deprived of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He instituted this fast for us to become more grateful to Him. And in reality, the fast is a depiction of our lives. The fast is a depiction of our lives. What does the hadith tell us? لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ. The fasting person has 2 points of happiness. فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِهِ. A happiness when he breaks his fast. وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ. And a happiness when he meets his Lord, رَبُّ الْعِزَّةِ وَالْجَلَالِ. Now, someone may ask, what's the connect between the two? How do we connect fasting to meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Breaking your fast to meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, your fast in this dunya is actually, your existence in this dunya is a fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you, you're allowed to marry. Only, well, in the case of men anyways, maybe I shouldn't even say the number. I'm a bit afraid to say it these days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us goodness. In the case of a man, Islam says 4. In the case of a woman, you're only allowed to marry 1. That's what Islam says, right? Of all the men out there, you're only allowed access to 1 right now. Of all the women out there, 4, and that's it, no more. No more. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala limited those numbers in order for you to enjoy of this dunya as much as is necessary, to get you through to the day that you will break your fast from this world with Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. You see how the fast has a period where there is scarcity. You don't partake of it. You deprive yourself deliberately, in fact. And then you get to the end of the day where you say, ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله. And one day that will be forever, because you'll break your fast with Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. You will be told, ادخلوها بسلام آمنين. Enter into Jannah with peace, secure, serene, happy. Today no anxiety, no worries, no depression. Today the dunya is over. You don't need to worry. Today, when your thirst is quenched, you will never be thirsty again. When your hunger is satisfied, you will never be hungry again. So, فَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ فِطْرِ. You have a happiness that spreads within you at the time of iftar. وَفَرْحَةٌ عِنْدَ لِقَاءِ رَبِّهِ. And a happiness when you meet your Lord. But it is only those who fasted in this world, not the 30 days of Ramadan alone, but they fasted from that which Allah told them to fast from. Haram to engage in zina, they kept away from it. Haram to drink alcohol, they kept away from it. Haram to backbite, they kept away from it. Haram to do all of this, they kept away from it. So they will enjoy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They deserve it and they will enjoy it. There's the other part of that ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And if you are ungrateful, then my punishment is severe. And this is something that we really need to take note of. Because by raising your gaze, as the hadith says, you raise your gaze, you belittle the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over you. You open up that phone, you look at their lives, you begin to belittle what Allah gave you. What happens? Allah doesn't say, we will punish you in the akhirah. Allah didn't say that. Allah said, Inna adhabi la shadid. Indeed, my punishment is severe. He's describing the punishment to you. And I will implore you to question yourself. That feeling, that emotion that you have within yourself of, my life is so measly, is that not a torment already in this world? Is that not a torment already in this world? You begin to lament yourself over what you have and look at what others have and say, I have nothing. What do I have? What did Allah give me? But if you do that, you will live a life of torment in this world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word kufr to describe ingratitude. And we know kufr is usually, it is translated to mean disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because when you are ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are more unlikely to thank Him, and then you are more likely to fall in complete and total disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the actual pinnacle of ingratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is it? What does Islam say it is? What's Islam's position on what the pinnacle of ingratitude is? Anyone know? What's the pinnacle, the height of ingratitude in Islam? What's Islam's position on this? Ingratitude, the pinnacle of ingratitude is disbelief in Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. It's disbelief in Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Because it is as though you are saying, I don't acknowledge my Maker. In fact, you are saying that. I don't acknowledge my Maker. I don't acknowledge the fact that He brought me into existence in this world. I don't acknowledge that He deserves my worship. I reject Him. That is the ultimate level of ingratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam. Now I'd like to take you back to the time of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, when there was a man who existed by the name of Qaroon. Qaroon had so much wealth that as people walked, as his people who were holding the keys to his empire walked, it would actually be a burden for them to hold those keys. So many of them would get together and get a hold of this chest that had all these keys. And it would be difficult for them to hold just the keys to his empire. That is how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. And then he reached a point where he says, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I was given this with knowledge that I have. It's because I'm an intelligent businessman. It's because I know what I'm doing. So he rejected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor over him, and he attributed it to himself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَرِحِينَ. Allah doesn't like those who are arrogant. And there was a group of people who saw this procession. You know, he would come out with his people and they would be carrying the keys, moving, and they would see the lavish horses and the caravans and the silk and what have you. So they found it amazing. Now, take this into today's world. These people are viewing everybody else's lives on social media, watching their lives. It's like those people standing on the sidelines viewing Qaroon and his procession, and they moving and they watching this scene before them, and they say, Ya layta lana, Ya layta lana mithla ma utiya Qaroon, innahu ladhu hadhin azim. We wish we had what Qaroon had. We wish we had what Qaroon had. Indeed, he is one whom Allah has given a lot to. Allahu Akbar. And I say this so passionately because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to swallow him up into the earth. And not only him and his empire. فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. So we swallowed him up, him and his empire, into the earth. And these people who are watching from the sidelines are astounded by the scene before them. Allahu Akbar. Look at this person whom we wanted his life today being swallowed up in front of us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is profound, dear brothers and sisters, if we pay attention to it, there is a real lesson to learn from a real story in the Quran here. وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ يَقُولُونَ وَيْكَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ لولا أمن الله علينا لخسف بنا. Allahu Akbar. And those who were wishing for his life yesterday, تمنوا مكانه بالأمس, they wished for his position yesterday. They said, وَيْكَأَنَّ اللَّهِ, woe be to this person. Allah gives rizq to whoever he wishes, and he contains it and constrains it for whomsoever he wishes. And then they said that had Allah not had his favor upon us, we would have been swallowed. We would have been swallowed with Qaroon. Who are these people? The very ones who wished for their lives yesterday. The very ones who wished for the life of Qaroon, watching him saying, I wish I had his life. And today what are they saying? لَوْلَا أَمَّنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Had Allah not had mercy upon us, had Allah's bounty not been upon us, لَخَسَفَ بِنَا, he would have swallowed us up into the earth as well with Qaroon. The life that you view and the life that I view on social media is not necessarily true. And even if it is, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, watching those lives will not get us and achieve us that which we want of it. It will not get us. You can sit and look at their lives for 10 hours in the day, and it will not get you what you want of their life. But thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you gratitude. It will give you contentment. It will give you peace. It will give you a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why at the end Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala displays to us in the story, لَوْلَا أَمَّنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Their attitude changed from one where they viewed the lives of others and the life of those who were pompous and rich and thought we want it, to one where they were grateful they were not given it. Allahu Akbar. You know what happens when you constantly view this imagery? Over time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what happens. It breeds hypocrisy in your heart. Hypocrisy in your heart. Why? Because you begin to wish for that which others have. And you make the standard of judgment the dunya. It's no longer the akhirah. You don't look at yourself and say, I'm praying so I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm remembering Allah so I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because this translates to Jannah. But you begin to actually make the standard of judgment. Did Allah give me a car? No, He didn't. It means He's punishing me. Did Allah give me the mansion? No, He didn't. It means He's punishing me. What that has done is it breeds nifaq, hypocrisy within the heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that when you get to this point, مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنوره وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. Their example is like that of a man who has kindled a fire. And when everything is lit in front of him, Allah gave you that light of Iman in your heart. Everything is bright. Then Allah takes away the light all of a sudden. Allah snatches it away. Why? Allah gave it to you and you weren't grateful for it. So He takes it away from you because you don't want it. And I ask you, What qualities does fire have? It has three primary qualities. Anyone know? Give us a quality, brother. One, fire. Come on. What does fire do? It burns. What else? It illuminates. And it's got smoke. Right? It's got these three qualities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He lit a fire, and Allah did what? He took away what? He took away the illumination. ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِ. Allah took away the illumination, so the burning remains, the smoke remains, the bad aspects to the fire, that which we deem to be bad, remain. Why? So the heart is burning. The heart is burning within, and it's dark. There's no even light there. There's no chance at seeing anything. So you are burning. It's torment within. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you reach this point. Allahu Akbar. Why? Not because He wanted this for you. Because you wanted it for yourself. Allah wants goodness for you. Allah wants forgiveness for you. وَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ أَن يَتُوبَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَيُرِيدُ الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الشَّهَوَاتِ أَن تَمِيلُوا مَيْلًا عَظِيمًا. Allah wants ease for you, and those who follow their desires, they want you to incline towards that in a great way, to incline towards it in a great way. So they want you to go astray. They want depression for you. They want bad and evil for you. Allah wants goodness for you. Allah wants tawbah for you. Allah wants to forgive you. So turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reignite that flame. Be grateful for the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you iman. These are things to live for. These are things to be grateful for. And I will leave you with one thing. You know, when your heart becomes hard and you can no longer see and it is difficult, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us something. He says that He mentions the eye. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. It is not the eyes that become blind. And Allah mentioned the eyes because this is the doorway to your soul. This is the doorway to your heart. What you see impacts your heart. Hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, lower your gaze. When you lower your gaze, then you have a chance to open up the other sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you to receive guidance from. And this is where most people are guided from this sense. By listening to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your ears. When you hear the words of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal, Allah revealed guidance. How did He reveal that guidance? By speaking it. It was auditory. And Jibreel heard it, brought it down to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It was auditory. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed it on to the ummah. It was auditory. So when you lower your gaze and you look away from that which Allah has told you to look away from, then your heart becomes open to the message that is coming. And that is why we find Quraysh put their fingers into their ears to block out the sound. They didn't want to hear Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because they knew that if we allow this in, it will affect our hearts. I ask you to lower your gaze, to learn to look away from that which is haram. And you know, oftentimes I think of it, that people tell us that, wallahi, you have mixed events. You have mixed events. You're a deviant. And I'll tell you something. Similar to what we are sitting here today was how the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was. There was no cover. There was nothing. There is a look of lust that is haram. And there is a look where you are looking at the cashier whom you are buying something from, and it's okay for you to look at her, deal with her. You're not looking at her with a look of lust. So there is a difference between the two gazes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell the believing men and the believing women. In another ayah he says, and the believing women, to lower part of their gaze. Which means you don't have to now, when you are standing with someone of the opposite gender, talk to them like this. That is a higher level of faith. Good. I respect you for that. But if you want to look at the person whom you are conversing with, there is nothing wrong. It's not a look of lust. That look of lust is what is a problem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us. May Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal illuminate our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our brains and souls and hearts to He Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.